All right, welcome everybody to a week 3 review of the Mills and Friends Fantasy Football League 2024. I'm your Commissioner Scott Mills. Thank you for listening along if you are, and I hope you enjoy this week 3 recap. So, let's get it started and get out of the way with the stinker of the group. My team, I didn't expect them to do well, but you never want to see 66-point week. That was pretty bad. That was pretty bad by me. And Team Chance with a respectable 111 points. But yeah, Anthony Richardson, after a really good fantasy week 1 performance, it wasn't a good eye test even on week 1. He just had a couple of nice touchdowns that made his numbers look really good fantasy wise. But yeah, even since then, he just hasn't looked good. He's been throwing too many interceptions, not running the ball to the extent that people were hoping. And so this has looked like a pretty bad pick for me and Anthony Richardson. And over here, you got Chance's team with Geno Smith, um, with not a great performance in his own right, but it was still better than Anthony Richardson. And he's stuck with Geno after Tua's injury. A lot of injuries, but I suppose like the last few years, it really has seemed like a lot of injuries. And then right here, Jonathan Taylor for Indianapolis got a really nice rushing performance with 2 touchdowns and over 100 yards on the ground. So that's what you want to see out of your first round running back. So that's a pretty good performance there. And I just had average out of Cam Akers, who's really like the second or third string running back there. They're down 2 running backs there in Houston, so I figured that Cam Akers would get some points, and he did. He got a touchdown, but really not the yardage that I was hoping for. But and he was a late pickup for me. I'm stuck at running back because I had Kenneth Walker, and he's hurt. I got a lot of injuries on my team. Brian Robinson had another respectful day, another touchdown, low yardage again. So without the touchdown, it would have been pretty abysmal from him too. And Travis Etienne, no touchdown, but respectable from the yardage standpoint, and that was just really bad from Jacksonville. They've looked really bad this year, so you're happy to actually get 10 points out of Etienne there. And then you've got the Rams are down their top 2 receivers, so I decided to give Tyler Johnson, one of the Rams' other receivers, a chance, who did decently in week 1. He just hasn't really done anything, even without any other really targets there in the Rams. They still won. Their running back is pretty good, but other than that, they haven't had a lot of offense, but they're doing all right. Mike Evans, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a really weird game. Like, they looked pretty good in the first 2 weeks. Baker Mayfield throwing, and Mike Evans looked like another solid year for him. And then, yeah, this was just a stinker of a performance there. Nothing was really going right for Tampa Bay. You're hoping that's just kind of an outlier performance there. For me, Nico Collins, he had the yardage. You'd like to see him catch. I mean, when he gets 10 targets, I like seeing that. But he only had 4 catches and 86 yards. That's another game that went really weirdly. You didn't expect Houston to get blown out by Minnesota. So just another weird one. For Washington, Chance really likes seeing Terry McLaurin having a nice 100-yard and touchdown day. And Washington with the surprise win over Cincinnati and scoring a bunch of points too, 38 points. So you really like seeing the volume that Washington's getting with their fantasy players this year. It's been kind of surprising. People didn't think they'd be as good with a rookie quarterback, but they're doing all right. And then right here, Chance is probably a little bit worried here about Mark Andrews. He just hadn't really been that good. For Baltimore, like, just not normal for him. Normally, he's one of the better tight ends. Big Fat Zero, didn't matter. He still got the win because his other players did all right, and I was terrible. Mike Gesicki for me, 6.7 out of a tight end. Like, I'm okay with it. I would like to see him grab a touchdown and get it up into like the 12-point range. But, for a tight end, I'll take a 6.7 performance. I just need to, like, I don't have from the other skill positions, from, quarterback, wide receiver, or running back. They're not doing anything either. So Josh Downs, this was his first game back from injury for Indianapolis. I was hoping to pair him up with Anthony Richardson, my quarterback, and if Indianapolis had a good game, like offensively, then that would have been good for me. It didn't happen that way. And then Calvin Ridley, who had a really nice game for me last week, just did nothing basically this week, so that's pretty rough for me as well. None of my guys really did anything. Kicker, uh, Brandon Aubrey had a 65-yard field goal. So that's why we see here it says one field goal 50 to 59, but he had two from 50 plus. So one of those was the 50 to 59. But in the first quarter, like Dallas, they just decided it was like one of the first points in the game for them too, and they're just like, yeah, we'll kick it from 65 because they trust their kicker so much, and he made it. So we did talk about potentially if if a kicker makes an over 60-yard field goal, because those may be becoming more common, like they get one extra point over just the 50 to 59, which is at 5 points right now. So then a 60 plus yard field goal would become 6 points. And we haven't gotten into 70-yard field goals yet. I don't know if I would even want. I hope that they don't quite get to that level, but you never know. So, yeah, that was pretty amazing by Aubrey. Kicker position, this matchup, it really didn't matter at all because he won pretty easily. So the extra point wouldn't have mattered a whole ton. My team was pretty bad. I should have gone with Aaron Rodgers, who had a pretty good game. So I'm definitely thinking about Aaron Rodgers over Anthony Richardson for future weeks. We'll see how that's going. And Austin Eckler's been pretty decent. So he's won, and then he got injured. So Austin Eckler, like, that's always the thing with him. Like, pretty good. Like, he always seems to find the end zone a lot, but then there's always that risk of injury. He's getting a little older too. But, the first 3 weeks he had pretty solid fantasy numbers. Not great, but for a backup running back, I mean, he's putting up 10 points per game over that. That's good flex numbers. Over here for Chance, he had Deontay Johnson, and the Panthers actually looked decent with Andy Dalton at quarterback. So maybe that quarterback change was just what they needed. And yeah, this is a huge game here. 8 catches, 122 yards, and a touchdown. Those are really good numbers. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. That could be a really good thing for Team Chance. And then, yeah, down here, the rest of these were just average. Jalen Tolbert, he's been all right for Dallas. Got a touchdown there. I probably should have put him in. But yeah, overall, just terrible. 66 points is a really bad number. We're going to ignore this week, and hopefully next week will be better. I really need A.J. Brown and Puka Nacua to get healthy, and Kenneth Walker as well. Because, looking at what Zach Charbonnet is doing for Seattle, those are touches that Kenneth Walker would have most likely been getting, and he probably would have put up similar numbers at least to that. So I definitely missing a lot of points from those guys being out. So on to the next matchup. We got Wolves Warriors defeating Shaq Slimy team 116 to 105. So this may have been the closest game of the week. There was a lot of lower scoring games in our league this week. There were a lot of lower scoring games in the NFL, I think. Really. And guys that you expect to be doing really well, just, there's a lot of like names sometimes that are catching a touchdown pass that maybe you don't expect. And so it makes fantasy scores maybe a little bit lower for this week. But I think as the season goes on, there's less preseason, so I think it takes guys longer at the beginning of the regular season to ramp up and do better. Um, but yeah, Lamar Jackson was really good, so he usually is very good in fantasy. So that really helped the Wolves Warriors team get their first win of the season. And Caleb Williams had a pretty decent performance as well. Threw 2 picks, which didn't help him. Uh, and then the Rams running back, yeah, he was the one bright spark for the Rams. He did the majority of their touchdown scoring, so definitely Shaq's team really likes to see that out of Kyren Williams, that he has been a really good player so far. James Cook for Buffalo's been really good so far this year. Buffalo's definitely running the ball quite a bit since they lost Stephon Diggs. So definitely the running game for Shaq's team looking good, even though he lost this week. Receiver Garrett Wilson was all right. You'd like to see that yardage, him have more yards, but he did get a touchdown, which kind of saved his day a little bit. But this is a first round player you want to see more than 11 points out of. For Brett's team, he's really happy Jamar Chase finally gave him his first round type of score that you're looking for there. 26.8 with 2 touchdowns and 118 yards receiving, which is really nice. Marvin Harrison, another nice game for Arizona. So that rookie receiver pick, those are always kind of risky. Those when they're being valued in the first couple rounds of a draft, and they're a rookie receiver. It's kind of a risky pick, but Marvin Harrison in weeks 2 and 3 has looked really good, so that's looking up for him. Amari Cooper finally had a really nice game for the Browns, although the Browns themselves looked really bad again. So, being a Cleveland fan like I am from living around that area, definitely don't like seeing the Browns struggling, but it was nice to see Amari Cooper finally do something. So, um, yeah. And then over here, the Browns didn't really run the ball with Deontay Foreman that much. At the tight end position, Kyle Pitts 6.9 won that matchup. Tight ends are just tough, like we've said. And yeah, Brett's actually running 2 tight ends. He's been running this for most of the season with Brock Bowers has been a decent tight end. But yeah, this is 2 positions there. Yes, these are expected to be 2 of the better tight ends, and we've seen Brock Bowers has been decent this year. But yeah, very interesting strategy starting with 2 tight ends there. Dallas's defense not looking good again. -1 points. That's a problem. You don't want to be getting negative points. That's a real setback from the defense. Like, I mean, 5. It's like okay, like it's not great, but that's at least not holding you back too much. But Brett's team, he still gets the win. So that -1 from the defense didn't come back to hurt him too much. On the bench, Juwan Jennings was on the bench. Shaq's team would have won for sure if he would have played Juwan Jennings, who he did pick up in the waivers, which is a really good waiver pickup, being that Deebo Samuels and George Kittle were injured for the 49ers. And Juwan Jennings has looked really good. He's had a bit of a breakout year and catching 3 touchdowns. Man, yeah, he's really looking at that, wishing he would have started him, out here. Really, he could have put him in for any of these guys, but I mean, like, I mean, Foreman, yeah, you probably could have put instead of Foreman, really, from the Browns, could have put Juwan Jennings, but who would have thought, he's just a waiver wire pickup, Juwan Jennings was, so, um, you know, in hindsight, you always look back and you wish you would have did something differently. You never know before the matches happen. So let's move on to our third matchup. We had Team Mills Cards versus Egg Ball Elite, and Egg Ball takes the win. So Mills Cards goes to 0-3, the only winless team still out there. So he's still looking for his first win. He's been going up against some pretty big point numbers. Again, this was a lower in general week for points scored. Uh, and so, yeah, just tough. He can't win a lot of games scoring only 90 points. Mahomes really has just looked average, although the Chiefs are still winning their games. Um, so, and then Josh Allen just had a really good. He was the best quarterback, I think, from week 3 for sure. He was looking really good, and Buffalo blew out Jacksonville. So yeah, 30.92. That's definitely what you want to see, especially since he was the first quarterback taken, and Eggball drafted him in the second round. So you see a 30-point quarterback performance in a week winning you a game. That makes that pick pretty worth it, I think. So that was pretty nice from him. And then Breece Hall with the respectable performance. First round player, 15 points. He'll take it. He won the game, so he's won his matchup, so um, not bad there. But here's an issue. We have another negative player. So again, the team with the player that had negative points ended up winning. Um, so Ramondre Stevenson just looked terrible against the Jets on Thursday. Lost another fumble, so I don't know if New England is thinking about trying to go to a different running back because Ramondre Stevenson has been struggling. That's not been working out too well. And then over here on the Mills Card side, the running backs really struggled as well, just 5-4. Tyreek Hill's really just, it's tough after Tua went down. That's really hurt Tyreek Hill's numbers, and really all the receivers for Miami. Um, their whole offense only put up 3 points. There's no touchdowns there, so their fantasy players are just not going to be getting the points uh, in that case. And Stephon Diggs had a nice day for Houston, one of the few bright spots there for Houston. Diggs actually outperforming Nico Collins this week for Houston by a little bit. And then you've got over here again, Mills Cards. Just nobody had a really great game. Their high scorer was the Jets defense. So, well, I guess Mahomes had 0.38 points better than the Jets defense. But you don't want your defense necessarily to be your second highest scoring player either. So, but you do like that the Jets defense has been good. So that's a bright spot. You're hoping some of these other guys will come around and have better days, for sure. So right here we had actually two of the better tight end performances, both going up against each other. Dallas Goedert with 10 catches, 170 yards, which is just a monster game out of the tight end position. Really like seeing that. Eggball does, I'm sure. And Dalton Kincaid was pretty decent. Caught the touchdown, which made his night look pretty good for a tight end. So that was really good there. And yeah, that's really what we got to say there. Mills Cards could have started Chuba Hubbard, who really looked good. Again, Carolina, they looked like a completely different offense with Andy Dalton running things, and they were able to really run the ball out because they got a big lead early. And Chuba Hubbard did really well, so that's a good one on your bench. DeAndre Hopkins for Tennessee finally looking healthier, so that's another spot on the bench where it's like, yeah, there's some things going on there that Mills Cards, they might be able to grab a win here in the next couple weeks. Hopefully, they need to go on a little run if they want to stay in the playoff hunt, which going 0-3 makes that pretty hard to do. So definitely looking for a win here pretty soon. And Team Emmy, again, with the really strong performance, the highest score for the week at 131.36. Defeating Return of the King, who had like 170 points last week or something crazy like that. He was the high score from last week and now doesn't break 100. So this team's been really streaky for Return of the King. Team Emmy's been really good. 3-0, off to a great start in the league, looking like one of the tougher teams, fantasy teams in the league this year. So she's got to be pretty happy about that. Dak Prescott with a nice fantasy performance. 28 points out of the quarterback position, really good. And the running backs also really good. Saquon Barkley's been fantastic for Philadelphia. So despite Philadelphia's offense only scoring 15 points in the game, he got all the touchdowns, Saquon did. And nearly 150 yards rushing, which is really, really good. And Jahmyr Gibbs was decent too, with a touchdown and 80 yards himself, which is, yeah. So the running backs are looking good. The quarterbacks are looking good for Emmy's team. For Return of the King, Jalen Hurts not looking so great. Jordan Mason, he's looking like an average running back. Kamara, it was still all right, just no touchdown there. Yeah, 14 points is decent, but you go up against 31, and that's pretty tough to beat. So here again, though, the Miami receivers are in a real struggle just because of that quarterback situation. So Waddle not looking great. Davante Adams not great after he had a really good week too. Malik Neighbors for Return of the King. You're really liking what you're seeing out of him. He kind of destroyed the Browns. He was working the corners for the Browns pretty well, and he's looking like another rookie receiver that's looking like that's a really good pick there. And DK Metcalf had a good game there for Emmy's team, so. Tight ends were just okay. They both had 5.3 points, so they were even there. A 0 for Emmy. So we've seen 3 of the winners had 0 or a player with 0 or negative points. Their other players just did really well, so that's why they were able to win. Bijan Robinson, first round pick, and he's been, I guess, slightly above average maybe, but yeah, I mean, he scored a touchdown, but he's not getting the yardage. That's really inefficient. 16 carries for 31 yards. That's like 2 yards per carry. That's really bad there. So definitely Bijan Robinson not as good as expected. Rashid Shaheed, 5 targets, didn't catch one of them. That's a rough day there for him. But Emmy's team got the win, so she's happy with it. And Buffalo's defense nice for Emmy's team too. The kickers didn't really have a huge impact in this one. Jaden Daniels, so yeah, she's got 2 really good quarterbacks. So that's something that any teams that are looking for quarterbacks, she could potentially look to upgrade her skill positions even more. Or, she might just want to hold on to Jaden Daniels and so there's definitely options here for Emmy's team. She's in a really good spot this year. Even on the bench, you see like Zach Moss, 18, Madison, 11. So you got 2 our running backs that had decent days that were looking good. And then Christian Kirk had 8 catches for 80 yards. The only thing he was missing was a touchdown to make his day really good. And then George Kittle's here on the bench. So even though, it's only got 5 out of the tight end, it's like when George Kittle comes back, I mean, that's a really good tight end. So her team's looking really strong here, for sure. And yeah, Lazard had another, he got a touchdown. The yardage wasn't there, so that kind of saved his day. But with that connection with Aaron Rodgers, he's looking all right too. Oh, we got somebody messaging in the chat. IDKJP. Yo, what's up, guys? Should I trade Garrett Wilson, Drake London, and Trey McBride for Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, and Josh Jacobs. I have Jake Ferguson already for tight end. Okay, so we got Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Trey McBride, who you're giving up. So this is a 3 for 3. So a lot of players exchanging here onto both teams. Rashee Rice, he had a lot of volume, so he's getting a lot of targets. So you like that there. Jaden Reed seems to have pretty good chemistry with Jordan Love. So um, I mean, he didn't do that much, but I think he's a solid quarterback. And then Josh Jacobs, who had a down week this week for Green Bay. So you're trading for two Green Bay players. I mean, if you're okay at receiver, like the tight end, yeah, you're not as worried about that because Jake Ferguson is a decent tight end. Um, but yeah, I mean, giving up two receivers then for you're getting two receivers back and a running back. So, and I think they're pretty similar-ish. I mean, Garrett Wilson, I'm guessing he was either a late first round pick or a high second round pick. And I think his chemistry might grow with Aaron Rodgers as the season goes along. So I'm sure he'll have his good games. The same thing, I mean, with Rashee Rice, it seems like he's been the main guy for Kansas City. I think it's a fair trade. I mean, Drake London hasn't been great for Atlanta yet, but he can definitely have big games himself. But yeah, I like Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed, and Josh Jacobs. I think they'll have big games themselves. So I guess if you're comfortable with it, I don't think that's a terrible trade at all. So that's just my thoughts on it. I'm not an expert in any way, so but yeah, I'd say like I don't think there's anything too wrong with that trade. Um, so those are some of my thoughts on that. So thank you for your questions. I've been getting like at least one question every week, so that's been kind of fun to see those. Um, so I hope your fantasy seasons are going well for you. Says, okay, thank you. I appreciate it. Just nice to hear another opinion. We'll drop a follow. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Um, all right. So let's look at the next matchup we had here for our league. Um, we had Team Ludina going against the Go Cardinals team, and Go Cardinals ended up winning this matchup by 12 points. We got Kyler Murray, uh, who beat out CJ Stroud. The Texans again, yeah, that was a weird game. I mean, Minnesota's looked really good. And Sam Darnold's been pretty good, throwing to Justin Jefferson. You have a weapon like that. I guess you can make any quarterback look decent. And then CJ Stroud and Houston, they just had an off game. Kind of like Tampa Bay. They had an off game. So Kyler Murray, decent. Not great, but he got you the win, so there's that. Derrick Henry with 29.9 points at the running back position. Really, really nice. So Derrick Henry still looking like a top tier running back, despite him aging, despite some of the little injuries that he'd had. Tennessee let him go, in Baltimore he's starting to pick it up this year. So as a Browns fan, I don't like seeing that, but yeah, I mean he's always been a good running back, so it's not too surprising that he's starting to do well, I would say. A-Chain for Miami, not great. Just their whole day was not great. Again, Tua being out, that's pretty rough there. So, and then we've got David Montgomery had a nice day for the Lions. I think Jahmyr Gibbs might have been injured for a little bit during this game, and Montgomery was getting some extra carries then. So 100 yards and a touchdown there. Really nice day there. And James Conner not as good for Arizona this week. Um, And then Justin Jefferson, another decent performance for Adina's team. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had a nice performance for the Lions. And yeah, you see Jameson Williams after his big breakout game last week. Now it's back to nothing, and so you're chasing the points like last week. Is like, oh, he was on the bench, and then you start him. That's the classic fantasy football thing where you're like, all right, I'm gonna put in Jameson Williams. It looks like he's gonna be really good, and then, and then he puts point 0.7, and then you bench him, and then he gets a really good week next week. That's the frustrating thing about figuring out who to start, who to sit in fantasy football. That's always kind of the crazy thing. But then Rashee Rice, 12 for 14 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. They were peppering him with targets there in Kansas City. He's looking like a really good receiver there, pick. So Dina's team should still be all right going forward, I think. Just like the off day from the quarterback, off day from Miami there, and some decent performances. Ayuk has not been great for the 49ers. He got his big fat checkbook, and he is not, even without Debo Samuel and George Kittle, you expect him to be the main receiver. He got 10 targets, only caught 5 of them for 48 yards and no touchdowns, so that's not great there. So, none. On the benches, yeah, Kareem Hunt hasn't done anything for the Chiefs yet, so we'll have to see there. Isaiah Pacheco's still out, but it looks like they're going with Carson Steele there. So I don't know how much Kareem Hunt's going to be helping, but you never do know. Not a ton else here. Rome Odunze, another rookie receiver who had a big day yesterday. So a lot of the rookies had pretty good, rookie receivers had pretty good games in week 3. Rome Odunze, Marvin Harrison was pretty good again. And then we saw, who was the third one that we saw? Oh yeah, Malik Neighbors was really good. Khalil Shakir for Buffalo has been pretty good as well. I think Keon Coleman was the rookie there, who is okay. He also had an okay game, but so, and then we have one more over here game. We had the no McCaff attack, which I think the number 1 overall pick. Anybody who had that and picked McCaffrey is really not happy this year, especially now that we're hearing that McCaffrey is going to Germany for a specialist to look at his calf or his Achilles tendonitis. They're saying is what the issue is, and it's really not looking good. There's like a YouTube doctor that I will listen to occasionally who is talking about it because he specializes in like the stem cell type of treatment for players, and he was saying, this is really not looking good for McCaffrey for his season this year, like coming back even. So definitely the Christian McCaffrey thing. It just came up so out of nowhere. Most of the drafts were already completed. It was a last minute scratch kind of from the week 1 game, and now it's looking like he might miss half the year. He might miss the whole season. I mean, obviously, like I have another league where I got the number 1 overall pick, and I took McCaffrey too, and so I'm in the same kind of like, oh, in both of my fantasy football leagues, my first round picks are out. Been out for first few weeks here. At least in this league, I had AJ Brown for the first week. It helped me get a win. But yeah, definitely tough when you have your first round pick out. And that's kind of frustrating. Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they had a good day. So 300 yards and 3 touchdowns usually wins a game, but Washington is looking really good. So they beat the Bengals. Bengals are really. Browns aren't in last place though. We're happy with that. But I don't think it's gonna last too long. I think the Bengals will start winning a few games here. They played pretty good on offense at least. Their defense, there's just something they haven't quite been right. Now over here, Zach Charbonnet for Seattle. Like I had Kenneth Walker again. It's like I kind of wish that I was getting those numbers because I feel like Kenneth Walker pretty much just about as good as Charbonnet, and so I feel like he would have been getting those numbers if it wasn't Charbonnet. So, but Lamb Chub play along is getting those points. So, and then Aaron Jones. So yeah, running back wise, the Lamb Chub play along team looking pretty good. Baker Mayfield, you picked him up this week because he's been playing good. It's like, yeah, he's playing really good with Tampa Bay, and then he has a really bad performance. That's the thing with Baker, and that's why the Browns let him go, though, because he would have some good games, and I really like Baker. He would have some games where he looked like a good quarterback, and then he'd just have a few games where it was just like, where's he throwing the ball? Like, this is just not good enough. And so yeah, this is Baker Mayfield in a nutshell. There, he'll show you some promise, and then he'll just be like, ooh. Yeah, that pretty much sums that up. Um, Chris Olave finally had a pretty nice day for the New Orleans Saints, so no McCaff attack. That was a big part of their win here. Devontae Smith um, had an okay performance. He was having a good game, and then he had a concussion, went out. Still got 11 points, which is pretty good, and 7 catches, 79 yards. Man, if he would have stayed healthy, he probably would have had over 100 yards receiving, possibly a touchdown as well in there. Um, but I'm sure he's happy getting the win. And you're hoping that Devontae Smith can recover from his concussion quicker than Tua, because Devontae Smith, I don't think has really had concussion history. So usually a first concussion, I think is they always say is quicker to come back from, where Tua's had multiple concussions, so his is gonna take several weeks to come back from, where Devontae Smith may be able to come back in 1 to 2 weeks. So I'll have to monitor that situation there. Um, and then Kelsey hasn't been that great this year, but I mean, he's been, I guess, average for tight ends. Um, Tight ends haven't been doing great. Sam Laporta had a bit of an injury issue too, so definitely I think no McCaff attack is worrying because he doesn't want to see more of his players go down after McCaffrey was hurt. But he's 2-1, so without his number 1 overall pick. So definitely, man, if he had McCaffrey, he'd be looking like a really strong team this year, I think. And there's Jaden Reed, so that's one of the guys that you were planning on trading for. Had a okay performance there, 50 yards receiving, and 20 yards on the ground. Just no touchdown. If he would have had a touchdown, it would have looked like a really nice game. And I think, as Jordan Loves comes back and is more healthy, or I think that Jaden Reed will still become a pretty big target for him. So I think Jaden Reed will have some good games to come. But Chris Godwin, um, had a nice game for Tampa Bay. One of the few bright spots. He had all the scoring for Tampa Bay there with the touchdown. And Green Bay's defense looking really good there for no McCaff attack. It really is. You always like seeing a 20-point uh, performance out of your defense because that makes up for an 8-point performance out of one of your running backs. And so it's like that's like having a really good player on your team that you can kind of swap with a bad performance. Um, yeah, Brock Purdy is decent over here for the Lamb Chop player on. And the backup running back for Green Bay did better. I mean, because of the touchdown, really, than Josh Jacobs. But I don't know. Is that going to be a split backfield? Like, is he going to be getting a bunch of the carries still? Like, he got 12 carries, which isn't like, I mean, it seems like that might be pretty even split there in Green Bay between Wilson and Jacobs in terms of touches there. Um, Jacoby Myers with a decent game there for Las Vegas, better than Davante Adams was, but he's on the bench. So again, it's like one of those where some bench guys were doing better than you expect. And then Cole Kmet down here, 20-point tight end performance. You would have really liked to see that. But you just never know. I mean, Sam Laporta, you drafted him pretty high. He was first or second tight end off the board right behind like Travis Kelce. And so are you really going to start this Cole Kmet over Sam Laporta? No, probably not. But in hindsight, it's like, well, you probably should have, but you never know that beforehand. So that's our week 3. I think that the offenses, hopefully, they will start picking up here in the NFL here, and we'll start to see better fantasy performances, and we'll be able to figure out which guys are going to be consistent. 'Cause there's been a lot of inconsistency, it feels like, this fantasy season in terms of who's getting points, guys getting injured, just, yeah, teams having inconsistent performances. So it's been a weird year so far this year. You can see our standings here. We still got 2 unbeaten teams here, an Emmy's team and Chance's team. And Chance has the lowest points scored against by quite a bit. My terrible performance this week really helped out. But he also, in the first 2 weeks, barely had 100 points, and he was able to win. So he's been getting some luck. And then you had Emmy's team with 372 points for. That might be the highest points for. Yes, it is in the league right now. So she's looking really strong, like the strongest team. And then down here, there are actually 2 teams which are winless in Shaq Slimy Squad and Mills Card's team. So they're definitely, if you want to make the playoffs, you gotta win at least like 3 in a row to feel like you have a shot still in those performances. Uh, so I think that's about all that I've got for today. In terms of going through that, the waiver wires in our league are gonna pick up tomorrow morning, so we'll see what happens there. I usually don't go over those too much. But yeah, we can kind of see here too. Had some what the performances were for the week. Best manager. So it always, like with the sleeper app, it'll show you like efficiency. So it'll compare to guys who were on your bench who is most efficient. And it was the Wolves Warriors team, 116 out of possible 120. I had the least efficient because I didn't have Aaron Rodgers in, and there was one other one. It wouldn't have helped me even if those guys were in. I would have only had 101, which wouldn't have been enough to win. So that's pretty bad still. And then yeah, my matchup was the biggest blowout. Yada yada. Moving on. Okay. And then the closest matchup here was Wolves Warriors against the Shaq Slimy Squad. High score Emmy's team looking scary, like we've said. Emmy's team, the overachieving. They're looking pretty good. Underachieving, my team. Yep. You know that. Josh Allen, best quarterback. Saquon Barkley, best running back. Jamar Chase, best wide receiver. Dallas Goedert, best tight end. Kicker, best kicker. Harrison Butker. And best defense was Green Bay. And Jaden Daniels was the best, of course, on Emmy's team. Had the best quarterback that was on the bench. So, all right. I think that's going to wrap up my review. Thank you for IDKJP for the follow. And I've done video game streaming too, but I haven't done that for a little while. We had like a video game podcast that we would do called Take Game Games, and those are on YouTube. You can see those. So sometimes I'll stream other things, but really I've just been doing the fantasy football recaps for my fantasy football league. I'm just kind of casual in that way. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed some of the content. Enjoyed listening to me talk here, and I wish you luck in your league as well. So thank you everybody for listening whenever you're listening. And again, this video, it'll go up on the YouTube channel, and I post these on that Take Game Games YouTube channel too, and then I post them in our league chat so people can go in and view as well. So that's how I've been doing that. If you have any suggestions, like for me, in terms of you're listening to me, you're watching me, and you're like, hey, any constructive criticism or anything that, you know, or something that you'd be like, oh, it'd be kind of fun to hear you talk about, like this particular thing every week, or something like that. I appreciate the questions too, so that's kind of cool. I like seeing that. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and I will be back next Tuesday. I don't really have a schedule, so I don't know. Like, this is the latest I've done a stream. I've done in the afternoon, usually on Tuesdays, but I'll probably be doing later here coming up because I'll be starting a new job here pretty soon, and so I'll be getting home a little bit later, and so I'll probably be doing more Tuesday evening or night streams going forward. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.